We'll just give it one more minute and then we'll get started.
Okay.
So hang tight. Okay, for the sake of time, I want to get started because I know everyone's had a long day, especially those of you who are on the panel. So I want to go ahead and get started. So thank you all for being here. This is a fantastic group of current student athletes at their respective universities. So I appreciate everyone, all of you taking the time, Alex, Sofia, Tara, Emma, for being here and providing such a great perspective and interesting perspective for our players for College Awareness Month. So I'm going to pass it over to Emma, who I hope all of you know as a former New England player, ranked very highly, and now the Babson College women's head coach. So Emma, I'd love if you could just start and give a little bit of background and then take it away.
Perfect. Thanks, Shauna. Yep. My name's Emma. I'm excited to be here with you guys tonight. So I don't know if you guys know me as a New England player. You guys are a lot younger than me, but grew up in Cohasset, Massachusetts, and grew up playing, all the New England tournaments, sectionals, all of that. It was back at Yale when I played it. And then played collegiate tennis at Wake Forest. After that, played professionally for a little bit. And then coached at Yale as a kind of came full circle playing sectionals at Yale, and then started coaching as an assistant coach for 2.5 years. And then this past January became the head coach at Babson. So again, was in some of your guys' shoes, growing up playing New England tennis and now trying to figure out, I'm sure a lot of you guys are trying to figure out what kind of your next steps are. So that's why we have these great players to help you guys out. So let's do a few player introductions. So Tara, do you want to start off, and then Sofia, and then Alek, and then we can get going into the good questions.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Tara. I'm currently a freshman at Connecticut College, and I'm on the tennis team there. I also played USTA tournaments within New England, and I'm super excited to start my spring season, which is in a while, but yeah.
Are you in your downtime now, your off season right now?
Yeah, we just finished our short fall season. Now we're but we're still playing. So
yeah, good. It's been good weather, so at least we can get some outdoor tennis in. All right, good. Yeah. Sofia, go ahead.
Hi everyone, I'm Sofia. I play tennis at the Air Force Academy. I'm originally from Maine. I also grew up playing USTA in New England and playing sectionals and all of that. But we're currently in the middle of our fall season, and I'm also excited for my first full college experience playing tennis, and
Awesome. Great. Alek, last but not least.
Yeah, so hi everybody. My name's Alek. I'm currently a sophomore at Brown University. It's in Long Island, and I play for the club tennis team there, which has been super fun. Like everyone else, I'm veteran of USTA New England, played sectionals, got to go to Kalamazoo, all of that, which was super fun. So yeah, I'm really excited to go and talk with you guys today. It's gonna be fun.
Great. And the first question's for you, so you're right back up. So tell us a little bit, Alek, about how you kind of started your process of looking and considering where you wanted to go to school. Was there a certain, did you create a list? How did you first start off, just to help some, upcoming players kind of try to go through that process?
Yeah, I can definitely give some insights on that. So I started looking at college tennis programs for tennis during my sophomore year of high school. So in terms of factors that were really important for me, academic rigor was one thing. I wanted to go to a really strong school where I could feel like I get a lot out of my education, as well as location. I wanted to stay in the New England area. So that was another big, factor for me. And of course, tennis opportunity, whether it was varsity or club, was huge for me. And I also kind of assessed where I was relative to their student body averages in terms of their GPA, SAT, stuff like that, especially since like varsity coaches and admissions offices, they'll both place a lot of value on academics. So especially at the top schools. So with all of those kinds of factors in mind, I created a list and I went down the list and basically tried to visit each of those schools since they were all in the New England area. I did a mix of virtual and in-person visits, obviously, because some of them were, this was during like the COVID phase. So a lot of them virtual visits I was able to get. But either way, I used those just to kind of assess whether I would be a good fit, whether, you know, it matched what I was thinking about or not, and answered some more of my questions. And yeah, in terms of like the nature of like the competitive nature of the schools on the list, I had a mix of schools where I felt like it was like I would call reach, some where I felt like I was a pretty good match, and a couple where that were some larger schools that were like I felt that were, I don't want to say safe, but I felt like I had a relatively good shot of getting in. So I did a good balance of those. I will say I did skew a little bit more towards the first category. And I also considered like school size too, which was huge because I didn't want to go somewhere where I was just cogging the machine. Like I wanted to like go to somewhere with either mid-size or small-size institution. So as such, I kept like I think the smallest school I applied to, ironically, was Babson, and the largest one was just UMass because I mean it's UMass. So it's like yeah, there was a lot of different things. I know I gave a lot of information there, but the core of it is basically I created a list and then I assessed each of the schools. I know some people from each of them, so I talked with them, got some insight, and also emailed a bunch of the coaches as well from each of those schools and got some responses to it there as well. I know I've been talking for a while, but that's pretty much.
I love it. That's great. Do you find when I talk to a lot of people, they've told me that visits can really make or break whether, you know, do you find that the visits, was that a really important piece? Do you recommend for players to like, you know, if you have a list, make sure you go see them?
Definitely. Yeah. Especially if they're local. Like, I think that there's no reason why, if you're, let's say you're from, Western Mass and you're going to apply to Amherst College, like there's no reason why you shouldn't visit. Even like whether it's official or just going on a college tour, like even just being on campus, you get a feel for what it's like being a student there. Like there were some campuses that I visited where they were very nice. I just couldn't really see myself there because of the environment. Yeah. So getting that like insight, it's like pretty irreplaceable by like you have to go and see it in person.
Yeah, I know it sounds corny sometimes, but sometimes when you step on a campus, you can just see yourself there and you feel it. So
right. Yeah.
Great. Tara, next question's for you. Any, I guess, one recommendation you can give to players kind of looking to further their education, whether they end up playing on the club team, college, what do you recommend?
Yeah, I recommend like when searching for schools, not to like waste your time looking at schools that you definitely don't see yourself going to. And, that could be like, through parents, they can pressure you into like looking at schools that they think you would want, but, maybe you don't want it. So, you just want to be really decisive and, where you apply to or like, where you send an email to a coach and stuff like that. And then also to, look at schools that, satisfy your academic needs and, other needs like, location and, if you'll be comfortable at the school or not, that's really important too. So, yeah.
Do you feel like just going back to my conversation with Alek, did you feel like you visited a lot of schools as well to try to help narrow down, or what was your process with that?
Yeah, I definitely visited quite a few schools, and yeah, there were definitely just a lot of schools that I just didn't see myself going to. And like, before visiting, I was really considering like, I definitely may go here next year, but after visiting, it was just like definitely like a no-go. It can also just be like the atmosphere and the vibe of the campus and, like the people you see, like it could be anything. But yeah.
Great. No, that's helpful. Anything to add, Alek or Sophia, on that, just in terms of any one recommendation? Do you guys have anything? And then I'll go to your next question, Sophia.
I just kind of like agree with what Alek and Tara said, and that like visiting is a huge kind of make or break, because like, I mean, talking to the coach is super helpful and they can tell you about the school, but at the end of the day, like once you're there, that's like you're going to be living that lifestyle at the university. So like seeing it for yourself and seeing yourself there is really important.
Perfect. Yeah. Sophia, going back to you, this is kind of a two-part question, but did you always know, I know you grew up playing New England tournaments, but did you always know you wanted to play college tennis? Was that something that was a goal of yours?
So growing up, I played a lot with my older sister, and then so I honestly, when I was like in early middle school, stuff like that, I just kind of wanted to play, and I wasn't
Yeah.
really planning on it. But then when she went off to college, and I was kind of an only child, and I kind of got to hear her stories and her experiences, and she loved it, so that made me want to go the same route. So I'd say like 8th grade, freshman year of high school, that's when I decided I wanted to try and play college tennis. So yeah, basically from then I was like, okay, I'm going to work hard and try and see where I can go. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell us a little bit about kind of that process. How did it look? Were you focused, primarily on Division 1? Were you focused more on Division 3? Was it just, the best combination of academics and tennis? Tell us a little bit about how you kind of approached that recruiting process.
Yeah, I'd say like similar to what Alex said, like I really wanted to find a good balance, like not only go for tennis, because for me at the end of the day, like I knew like after college I wanted to maybe get my master's, get a job and stuff, but like I did work really hard in tennis, and I wanted to go to a good program that I can still get better and enjoy the game and work hard. So I'd say that was the biggest thing, and I'd say biggest challenge with finding a school and kind of finding what's right for you. But I'd say going into it, I was primarily looking at Division 1 universities where I could play. That was a big thing for me, was like playing in the lineup, but also like a good like rigorous academic. So I did look at some Division 3, but also finances were a big part of that. So primarily Division 1 universities gave me more opportunities for scholarships and whatnot. So that's kind of where I stuck it out for the most part. And yeah, so that worked the best for me.
Yeah, that's helpful. Did you know, I guess, based off of like to help some players kind of understand like, what kind of a Division 1 coach is looking for? Did you know based off of your ranking or just from coaches' responses? Like, how did you know kind of Division 1 was achievable for you?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, in the beginning stages, I used UTR, and now it's like WTN too.
Yeah.
I'd say like those ranking in general you can kind of gauge, like you can see the rankings of the college players on that team and kind of compare it to yours. And I did make a list too, just like Alec did, and I kind of had my reach schools that like those players all had like really high rankings that I was like, I reached out to everyone no matter what, because I was like, it doesn't hurt to reach out. It never hurts to reach out, so always do that. But and if they say no, they say no. But and then I kind of had like my more reachable schools and then kind of safe schools as well. But I kind of got a feel, just like also looking at NCAA rankings, where the schools were after the spring season, or just like how they were doing. So that really helped me gauge like what schools were at what level, and then where I saw myself.
Yeah. I love that you said, the worst thing that can happen is if you email a coach and they're not interested. Either they don't respond, which I don't like when coaches don't even do that, but, or they just say, or you just say, I'm not, you're not at the level. And okay, that's, a tough pill to swallow, but at least so it never hurts.
Exactly.
So yeah, definitely. I think also the UTR thing has become, it's super easy if players are kind of wondering whether they kind of stack up against the rest of the team. You can type in a school, you can do it on tennis recruiting, can do it on UTR, you can type in a school, it'll tell you all their UTRs. That's super helpful just to see like, okay, am I in the ballpark? Am I not? So I sometimes like also when I'm playing other teams, we'll look at UTRs and stuff. Anyways, that's great. Alek, back to you. You have a little bit different perspective playing club tennis. Can you tell us a little bit about how you kind of came to that decision? Obviously, you grew up playing competitive in New England, and kind of talk about how you decided club was the best fit for you instead of playing on a varsity team, because I'm sure you had the option to do both.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a big step back to kind of get to why club tennis was like a good fit for me. So in terms of like all the schools I had on my list earlier, my top choice was definitely Brown. Like I knew that from pretty much the moment I had made the list. After I had my visits, after I met people from here, like I knew it was the place I wanted to be. And as such, I originally was targeting, playing for the varsity team. And I found out from emailing the coaches that, from Brown and other Ivy schools that, the requirement for UTR on these teams is quite difficult, especially from my perspective. So I was doing well on that path. I think I was on pace kind of through 16s, but eventually I started to suffer some injuries, particularly once to my rotator cuff. I had a lot of foot problems, I still do, and problems with my hands as well that really hindered my progress. So as such, I kind of fell off the trajectory I needed to get to kind of what Sophia was mentioning earlier. Like you see the UTR website, you see where they are, what age they are. I was kind of on that path, and the injuries kind of did a little bit of this. So realistically speaking, like my parents and I realized that, this was not going to really get the result that I was aiming for, especially considering the schools that I really wanted to go to. So, I mean, I didn't want to give up tennis at all because I love the sport and I wanted to compete in matches, but my parents and I both agreed that I should really pivot my focus on academics and really differentiate myself from there. So that's when I started considering club tennis, because there's always walking onto a varsity team, but that's just more challenging. It's harder to plan for. And sometimes varsity teams just don't need walk-ons if they've filled up their roster. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a hit or miss game. And just given my injury history, I didn't want to be consistently just beating myself up constantly and running into more and more injury problems as I went through college. That'd be such a buzzkill. So for me, once I was admitted to Brown, I'd heard plenty of great things about their club tennis team. That's when I really started to consider it. A bunch of my friends, I wouldn't say a bunch, a couple of my friends from USTA New England who were older were on the team already. And one of my really good friends in the same class as me had one of his great friends in high school, played on the same high school team, plays on the Brown Club tennis team. So I was able to meet these guys and talk to them earlier on, and I got a very good impression from them. I wanted both the tennis level to be quite high, which it is, but also I wanted a great, social atmosphere. I wanted to meet new people. And after that first impression, I was like, yeah, I definitely want to go look more into club tennis. It also helps that my doubles partner who used to play with back in USTA, he plays for Yale, who played Brown a lot in the sectional and national tournaments. And he's like, oh yeah, Brown's got like a really good team. Like you should definitely go and try out for them. So getting the chance to hearing about the level being very high.
Yeah.
Still, even though it was a club team, and also the social aspect was huge for me. And, specifically for Brown, I would say our club tennis team, we have great practice times. Practice are 9 p.m. at night, which is way out of, any scheduling conflict, which is super helpful for me because I pack my days with different things to do. And additionally, again, I mentioned the awesome mix of personalities of people on the team. Even during tryouts, I was like, oh, this is going to be a very nice mix of people I can meet. And I can testify, I've already made so many new friends, even met my current girlfriend as a result of club tennis. So, yeah, so you can probably tell that I'm very grateful.
I love it. So you mentioned a little bit the practices being at night. How often, because I want to compare and contrast to Tara and Sophia's experience playing varsity versus club, just to give a little bit perspective. How often are you practicing? So you're saying 9 p.m. practice. Is that 3 times a week? Is that every day?
Yeah, good question. So that 9 p.m. type practice is 3 times a week. Okay. Our club team is split up into, you've got your male side and your female side. So you have 2 male practices, also 2 female practices, and 1 co-ed practice. So I play 3 times a week if I want to, but if I'm busy with exams, last few weeks, I've been completely stacked with work. I had 2 midterms. So, I needed to catch up on some stuff. I can always just say, you know what, I'm not going to go to practice today. We don't have a coach, so the captains are really the only leadership, and they don't mind if you miss some practices. Even if you only come once a semester, they don't mind that either. You get a lot of different variety in how people commit and attend. And you'll see you'll have the cool dynamics that you see your regulars, people who come to practice every single time. They have streaks and they're proud of it. But you also have people who just show up once every month and they're just there for vibes. And you love seeing them because you never see them elsewhere on campus. Yeah. So it's you get this really cool dichotomy of people. And that's what I love about club tennis. So I hope that kind of shed some light on the practice schedule.
Yeah,
I'll talk about this more
flexible. Later. Which is nice. Yeah.
It's very flexible.
What about competition wise? How often are you guys going to play tournaments at different places? Are you traveling?
Yeah, I was going to dive into this in a future question, but I'll definitely give you the brief rundown now. We play about every 3 to 4 weeks in terms of competition. It goes all throughout the year. We have sectionals we just had sectionals actually for the New England, for New England. And we also have nationals that come up after in the early spring. So those are the main tournaments, but we also have invitationals and small scrimmages, which I'll get into a little more later. But yeah, there aren't as many matches, definitely not as many matches as you would get for a varsity team. So if that's a huge priority for you, that's something to consider. But you can also like just like call up your friends and play sets. Like this is what I do. Sometimes if practice attendance is light, I'm just like, hey, you want to go play a set? Like I'm down, let's do it. And then we just go and treat it exactly like a match. So you still get that opportunity, but it's not as formalized as you would see for a varsity team. But it's still fun.
Okay. No, that's great, Alek. Thank you. Tara and Sophia, I don't know if your schedule will be similar or different, but Tara, do you want to go first, and then Sophia can kind of fill in any gaps that are different for her, but just like what a typical day looks like for you when you're going to class, when you're practicing, and do it for when you're kind of more in your regular season, not off season, just so we can get some
Sure.
perspective of how often you're playing and all that.
Yeah, so here for like the spring season, in the morning we have a practice, probably like it's around 7:45, that type of thing. And then we have classes, or at least I have classes like, throughout the afternoon, like after practice throughout the afternoon. And then we have another practice in the afternoon for about like 2 hours until like 6:30-ish. And then like, we go eat, and then, you hit the library. And then also we have lift like 3 times a week. And that's typically like whenever you're available. There's no like scheduled time for it, but you have to find a time in your day. It could be with other people too, to go to the gym and lift with the coach there.
Great. Thank you. Sophia, what's your day look like?
My days kind of switched in that so the morning we typically have classes and training, military stuff, all that jazz. And then I typically have practice around like between like I'd say 2 and 3:30 we'll start, and then we have a 2-hour practice followed by either conditioning or weights. So and they normally alternate. So like one week we'll have 3 days of weights, 2 days of conditioning. Another week we'll have 3 days of conditioning, 2 days of weights. But we practice 6 days a week and we get Sunday off. So we have practice, weights, and then studying, dinner, stuff like that. So yeah, that's about it.
And in comparison, so, Alex said he can miss some practices. He can if he can just let the captains know. You're kind of required, I'm assuming, to be at every practice for the most part, Tara and Sophia?
Yeah. I mean, if you're not at practice, like you don't really expect to play like in the matches.
Yeah.
So yeah, you want to be at practice to play in the matches and, play in the lineup as well.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely required, but they're definitely understanding, like, if you're super stressed, like, you can take an academic day where, like, you get practice off and you have a day for academics, but, like, that's on a need to need, like, that's a need basis. Like,
Yeah.
if like, you can't really abuse that, or obviously if you're sick and stuff, they're understanding, but for the most part, you're required.
Yeah. So I think the biggest difference, again, club tennis, you still get very competitive matches just like you would in varsity, but I think the level of commitment is probably more flexible, Alek, would you say, just in terms of like the amount you're on court and the amount you're kind of the time you're putting in, would you say?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, you could just use. I'll give like a little bit more information about the length of each practice and like the content. Like we don't do any kind of additional training. Like
Yeah.
there's no cardio, there's no weights. If there was weights, I would be cooked because I can't lift for anything. So like that's one of the reasons why I don't do club tennis. But like we only play for we play for essentially, if you have 2-hour practices, which it usually is, assuming you go to each of them, that's 6 hours a week, right? That's just 6 hours a week of tennis, and it's not like. We're usually doing games because we have a lot of players. Our club team's pretty large. We have to play games that can fit multiple people on each
Right.
court. So it's usually a lot of dingles, if you guys are familiar with that,
Yeah.
and team singles. So like that's mainly like not a lot of serving, like not a lot of point play unless there's people like points, unless there's like a severe drop in practice attendance every few weeks or something. So it's definitely a much different environment, like even on a per practice and even on like what you actually do in practice basis than varsity. That's something to consider.
Okay. And Tara and Sophia, do you guys feel like kind of what to expect at, like, do your coaches kind of lay out for the week what's expected? Do you know kind of going into each day what you're kind of going to be focusing on for each practice?
Yeah, my coach, he'll like send us like a text message on like the team group chat to like outline what we're doing for practice so that like we don't have any surprises or anything like that. So
So we like have our schedule and when we play, but in terms of content, like you can kind of expect similar things, but like this week, the past two practices, we've been doing only doubles work. But like
Yeah.
before that, I didn't know, but she'll say like, oh, like this is kind of the theme for the week. This is what we're working on. So it's kind of gonna be similar things, but in terms of like specific schedule of the practice, we don't know.
Okay. Well, that's great. Thank you everyone for that insight. Alek, I had this question for you, but I think I'm going to open it up to everybody. Whoever wants to, Alek, you can start. But how much involvement did your parents have in your whole process? I mean, I know some parents who have been super involved. My parents were involved. But do you guys find like your parents were involved in your recruiting process, or they kind of just did they let you go for it?
I guess I can start.
Yeah.
So I will definitely say that my parents early on, they were definitely great resources for me to have in terms of assessing different schools because they were going with me to these virtual visits or in-person visits, and they were able to make their own judgment calls. So mom, dad, and I would often have lots of real discussions about, okay, what did we think about this school? Did we like the fit? How did you like our tour guide? Stuff like that. And we were able to really get a much more holistic perspective because like I'm biased, I can admit that. Everybody has their own different, perceptions of things and they notice different things too. And at the end of it, this is such a, I don't really want to put any pressure on anybody, but it's a big decision. You want to make sure you cover all your bases in terms of what you have in terms of information you can look at. Right. And additionally, they also helped me with, helping craft an email to send to coaches when I was still looking more towards varsity. Like that was good because they're able to have, them proofread it from, a coach's perspective and see, okay, like, am I conveying myself well? Am I articulate? Obviously, are there any typos? Am I missing any accomplishments or achievements that I could mention here? Like that was very helpful. But I will say that all of the communication with any coaches early on or reaching out to people, that was all done by me. Like my parents did not like reach out to anybody on my behalf. And I think that's just advice that every parent and kid should know. Like if you're going to speak to a college coach, it better be you speaking to that coach because it's not the best look to have your parents speak for you. Because your parents not playing on the team. I mean, they might be good at tennis, but they're not playing on the team.
That's a great point. And I think, I sometimes will get an email from a parent and I'm like, well, that's great. I'm looking forward to talking to your daughter. So
yeah, it's like, how do you respond to that? You know what I mean? Like, it's a little weird.
Yeah, nope, that's a great point. Tara, what about you? How involved were your parents and Sophia as well?
Yeah, my parents weren't really that involved. I mean, apart from like helping me with my email and like the formatting and stuff like that, they also helped me like find schools that they thought that I would like. But yeah, like when emailing coaches, like it was only me doing that, never my parents. So yeah.
Great.
I'd say for me, my parents were more involved in the beginning of my process, like summer before my junior year when I first started like reaching out to schools. But I think once I got a handle on it, they backed off a lot, and it was really just me kind of doing my thing, and they check in with me like once in a while and be like, hey, like who are you talking to now? Like what are you interested in? But they were super just open about what I was interested in and about what I wanted to pursue. I'd say largely my sister played a big influence on this process because she went through the whole recruiting. So I actually talked to her way more than I talked to my parents about it. So I'd be like, hey, like, can you help me draft this email, or like what kind of questions should I ask this coach? And she'd be kind of more involved with that and making my spreadsheet, making it look pretty and stuff. But my parents were always there to like go with me on visits because it was also important for them to like approve like of my choice, even though I was the one going. I wanted to make sure they were okay with that. And yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's helpful to have a sibling that has been through it and it's done at a high level. And yeah, that's a bonus.
Helpful. Sure. I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, that's great. Going back to you, Tara, in terms of like when you started talking to coaches, how did that whole process look? Did you start with emails? There's a bunch of different ways, right?
Yeah.
You can just pick up the phone and call. You can send an email. You can set up a call with coaches. You can text. What was kind of your process with that?
Yeah, so I started with an email, and that included like my tennis recruiting video, which was just like, strokes and point play and stuff like that. My academic interests, and my tennis stats and like rankings and stuff like that as well. Then I also included my contact information, like a phone number, if they wanted to call me. And then after that, like they would get the email and sometimes they wouldn't respond. Most of the time I'd say they would respond, but if they were interested, I would try and set up a call with them so that, we could discuss, the further opportunities or if I could be on the team or like, just other questions that are relevant to being on the team. But yeah.
Did you how did you come up with that list? Was it the same thing in terms of reaching out, looking at ranking, all that? Like, how did you kind of create the very beginning stages of that list?
Yeah, so I looked at UTR, like the UTRs of teams, and then also schools that I was just interested, like academically, that would, fit. But yeah, that UTR is definitely really helpful to see like where you place compared to other players.
And in terms of, again, so you send an email, you get a response. How many phone calls were you having with coaches just in terms of talking about like introduction phone calls?
Just like one introduction phone call. And if I was like still interested, then I would like probably schedule another one if, I need more information. After that, they would typically like offer, oh, do you want to visit the school or like, do you want to meet the team and stuff like that?
Okay.
And yeah.
So did you take an unofficial visit or an official visit to Connecticut College to meet the team and the coach, or how did that look? How did you decide on Connecticut?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was fun. So like I first like had a meeting with the coach like in person. And then he introduced me to the team, and the team was like friendly and they would like answer questions and stuff like that. And they would really just tell me, everything there is to know about being on the team here.
Mhm.
And yeah.
Great. That's very helpful. Sophia, I lost my place in my questions. What was the number one question you would ask coaches when you were trying to decide if a team was the right fit for you? I think it's, when you're going on visits, you get one-on-one time, even phone calls to try to narrow down options. What was a common question that you asked to kind of see if it was the right fit for you?
So for my phone calls, I had a Word document that I had a list of all my questions just in case like conversation died or something. Like I'd always have
nervous.
questions prepared.
Good to be prepared.
Yes, definitely. But I'd say like my top 3 questions that I asked, one was I asked how the team dynamic was among the girls, just I guess from the coach's perspective. And then that was also something like that I saw when I went on a visit, because I think for me personally, that's a big thing, is like getting along with the girls on the team. And because essentially you guys are playing together, you spend a lot of time together at the courts, working out, all of that. Another thing I asked was more academic side. Like I told them my interests. I asked kind of the common major of the girls and more about the school, I guess. Those were also things I guess I could research on my own online, but I kind of just wanted to see like what the coach had to say. I'm trying to think. I had one other like really big one. I mean, along the team dynamic question, I asked like if the girls lived together or kind of how their rooming like dorms were freshman year. And then on top of that, I'd say their schedule. Like I really want to know like when did they have classes, when did they have practice, and then the load of their schedule. So
well, what question did you find was the most helpful in kind of making, like, can you narrow down like one question that everyone must ask in this college process? Can you think of that?
I'd say another thing for me, I didn't say this earlier, but I also asked them, it was kind of a hard question to ask, especially in my first calls when I was nervous. But as I did more calls, I felt more confident asking. But it was basically like how many spots they had on the team, because that was like essentially like I can talk to this coach, but if they didn't have any spots available, it's like I'm not going to go to the school. I mean, I could walk on, but I really wanted a spot on the team to play in the lineup for me. So I'd say that was a really big question for me, narrowing down. Like there's some schools I really wanted to go to, but they already filled their spots or they only had a walk-on position. So then I kind of moved that school from like my top 3 to maybe like my 5 to 8. So I'd say that was my most important kind of narrow hard question, but you got to ask
No, I
it,
know.
so.
No, but it's good. Especially I think if you're somebody who knows, for instance, okay, I really need a scholarship. I think that is a question that you need to ask early on, just so you're not wasting your time or the coach's time. You know, if they don't have any
Exactly.
spots available, it's different when you're, you know, Division III non-scholarship, club tennis non-scholarship. That's a little bit different. But you know, those are questions you need to ask early on, and it can be awkward,
Yeah.
those first conversations. And that kind of leads me to my next question. It's kind of open-ended for anyone, but was anyone shy or nervous during the process? Was anyone kind of worried about, you know, I know it can be intimidating when you're trying to showcase yourself, you know, things you should say, things you shouldn't say. Am I bragging? Am I not bragging enough? Tell
Mhm.
me a little bit about, you know, how you guys were kind of feeling starting this process.
Yeah, at first I was definitely really shy, especially like on phone calls, but you know, as I did more phone calls, I gained a lot more experience and then became more confident. Like I also had like a set of questions that I would like run through so that, you know, the conversation wouldn't run out. I think that's a really key thing to do because, you know, it can get really awkward sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, as time went on, I became more confident. So yeah.
You always need a couple practice calls, right?
Yeah.
So I always tell players, you just got to start somewhere, right? Have that first call, and it might not even be with the school you're super interested in, but just to kind of get the nerves out and have a conversation. That way, when you're talking to your dream school, you're a little bit more comfortable, right? Alek, what about you?
Yeah, I feel like it's a little bit tougher for me to speak on this because I wasn't in the process for as long.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, I was not as nervous in terms of calls or emails because I feel like you can prepare yourself, you can express yourself. What I was more nervous about was during college showcases where I played in a couple of them. Meeting coaches in person was a whole different ball game because, like, some of them don't know who you are. You have to introduce yourself, and you can't just go into a spiel about your achievements or your whatever, your GPA or your play style. You have to be very concise and conversational.
Yeah.
So that was quite challenging for me. I didn't have to go through that a lot because weren't that many showcases, but that's definitely something that to consider and practice for. Like, you are going to have to you might have to speak to a coach in person, and that's a whole different, ball game than just, sending an email or even a phone call. So I think it's something to keep in mind, but I didn't really feel too reserved overall about like tooting my own horn. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes I would underspeak a little, like undersell a bit, but I think that's okay because at the end of the day, you don't want to come off as someone who brags. You want to make sure that people know that, hey, I did this, but I'm not taking credit for this. I'm not going to act like I'm better than anyone else because of this. I'm just mentioning that I did this.
Right.
So you have to striking that balance. Once you can really do that comfortably, it becomes so much easier to talk about yourself and what you accomplished.
Yep. And going along with that, in terms of, I know you guys were all, playing junior tournaments throughout high school. How would you kind of keep coaches up to date on, would you send an email? Hey coach, I just had a great tournament. Were you guys nervous or shy to do that? I remember as a player, my parents being like, you should send them that you did really well in this. And I'd be like, that's awkward. Like, so again, it was a long time ago, but how do you guys kind of handle that? Is that something that you felt comfortable doing, or how do you keep coaches up to date on kind of your progress and what's going on with you?
I would say for me, like, once I had like an established couple of schools that I knew I was interested in, and like we were keeping our communication back and forth.
Yeah.
Something I'd say that was really important was staying consistent and keeping them updated, even though I was so busy. But like before hard courts, for example, like a big tournament, especially when there are a lot of coaches there, I drafted an email that was like, hey, I'm gonna be at this tournament. I'd love if you could watch me play. And I'd love to meet you face to face. Like Alek said, meeting the coach face to face, like it's really important establishing that relationship than just over the phone. And then even just like if I played a level 4 and I did well, like I'd reach out to them and kind of feel it and let them know how I did. But I also ask them questions. I'd always try to look up like their record. Like if it's the spring season, especially, I'd be like, oh, hey, I saw you had a really good win against this school. Like I hope the girls are doing well. I hope the season is going smoothly. And I'd say just like keeping the line of communication going so they don't forget about you, or just so they know that you're interested, because they kind of want to see that input from you as well. And
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I think also from a coach's perspective in the spring, especially, we get so busy and we kind of, it's not that we were not showing interest in the people, our recruits, but I think our main focus is the team and our season. So when we get an update and it's just like, oh, great, I didn't have to look that up. It's super helpful. And I think it shows mutual interest. And, that's just a good thing to keep in mind, that you're never annoying a coach. Listen, they wouldn't reply in the beginning if they didn't want to talk to you. They probably just wouldn't respond or say, I'm not interested. So I love getting updates. I think it's great, and it takes kind of a burden off of me as well to have somebody reach out. And I'm like, awesome, I didn't have to look that up, because there's a lot of things going on. So that's great. Anyone, Tara, do you have anything different than Sophia mentioned?
No, but I definitely encourage keeping coaches up to date so that they remain interested in you and don't forget about you. So yeah.
It can be something really short too. It doesn't need to be even just a text. Like, I know that's a lot easier these days. Hey coach, I just wanted to let you know. I get school updates too. I just got an A, or I got a 5 on my AP exam. I'm like, awesome, that's amazing. So any little update, just to kind of keep your name in the coach's mind is helpful. All right, guys, I have a couple more questions, kind of open-ended questions, but anything that I haven't hit on yet that you guys are like eager to tell the group about, anything that you're really excited to talk about?
I was going to go give something a little bit.
I'd love that.
Okay. So kind of pivoting back to some of the other like aspects of club tennis.
Yeah.
We mentioned the matches, and I mentioned nationals and sectionals.
Yeah.
Not everyone on the team gets to play in those. So we have like a travel team of our 5 best male and our 5 best female players, and they all go to like the bigger tournaments like sectionals and nationals, and you have to like try out to be part of that. So like that's when you can really you'll see the difference in commitment. Like people who are going obviously on sectionals are going to be showing up to a lot more practices, whereas some people who aren't probably are just going to be, they'll come however much they want to at the end of the day. So that's not a huge part of it. Like it's not as widely emphasized as like a larger scale like regional tournament for varsity, but it's definitely still something that we value, and it's something that we take a lot of pride in, and playing in those tournaments. I also wanted to highlight the social aspect of it a little more. So because we're not just a club sports team, I feel like, especially at Brown, I feel like there's the mix of club sports and social clubs. Like they've kind of fused together to create quite an interesting environment. So for example, club tennis, we host mixers with other club sports teams, team barbecues, get other kinds of get-togethers. My friend at another school said that their club tennis team went on a ski trip together, which was super cool. So especially as a freshman coming into college and you don't know a lot of people and you're looking to try and find someone where you have mutual interests with, that is invaluable experience to have. And especially it's super critical too, just to know that, hey, I can get along with these people both in a social and a competitive way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of I kind of wanted to bring that up because it didn't really I wasn't sure if I emphasized it enough before.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that. We just got a question. Can kids contact the university coach and ask questions before 16? That's a good question. So again, I've coached D1 and then coached D3, so the rules are a little bit different. So in Division 3, you can correspond with coaches pretty much at any time. It's a lot more flexible. Tara, did you feel like you were, I don't know, when did you start reaching out to schools?
I started reaching out to schools honestly pretty late in the game after June 15th.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. So Division 1, June 15th going into your senior year. So you've completed your sophomore year and June 15th hits. That's when all the emails will come in, and that's when Division 1 coaches can officially reach out. So that's kind of a big day. In terms of, I have players that are from all ages that reach out, and I can correspond back and forth, but it's really, you can't take official visits or anything like that until your junior year. So a little bit different between Division 1 and Division 3. Usually, when we would get questions when I was at Yale and someone would reach out and they were a sophomore, I'd say, respond, we can't talk right now, but I'm looking forward to talking on June 15th. So I definitely would still say reach out. Don't let that, some coaches won't respond until June 15th. So don't let that discourage you. It's just going to be different depending on, what division you're looking at. hopefully that's helpful. All right. Sorry, I just opened my, all right. Going back to anything for you, Tara and Sophia, for just anything important that I'm forgetting to ask, or anything that you think is important for everyone to know?
I would just say, in terms of the recruiting process, like it can seem intimidating at first and reaching out to coaches and stuff like that. And for me at least, like everyone's busy in high school with tennis, like traveling to tournaments, academics, all of that stuff. And then adding college searching, application, it feels like another job basically.
Yeah.
So at least for me, I remember I was a bit stressed, but I'd say the biggest thing is just embrace the process. Like it's super exciting. You can look up places to go and work hard, and you'll find the right fit for you, whether it's playing D3, D1, club, varsity, like there's always something out there. So as intimidating, maybe stressful as it seems, definitely embrace it, and it's going to work out well. So
I love that. Tara, anything?
Yeah.
different?
I would also say just like not to, compare yourself to other people a lot, because, that can sometimes like make you feel bad.
Mhm.
But, just know that like it will work out for you, like however it goes. And yeah.
Great. Any resources that you guys used that were particularly helpful throughout your recruiting process, or just starting to look at schools, whether it be people, websites, recruiting agencies, anything like that, that were particularly helpful for you guys?
So for me, I primarily just used like spreadsheet to make my spreadsheet and stuff like that. And then, like I mentioned before, UTR, looking at ranking. In terms of the academics and just learning about a school, I think there's this website called niche.com, or I think that's what
That's
it
a
was
good
called.
one.
Yeah,
That's a
but
good
that kind of,
one.
it like gave a grade to a university, and that, I mean, kind of, you can't take that all, you got to take it with a grain of salt, but that gave me a good idea on the level of academics, like school life, just the campus, the food. It kind of told me everything other, like besides the sports
Food,
that I could
wow,
learn
this is a
about it.
detailed
Yeah,
website.
it told you everything. So I thought that was helpful for me. But other
Okay.
than that, I didn't use any really tennis recruiting. That's,
Yeah.
but primarily just Gmail to reach out to people, and then spreadsheet, all that stuff to stay organized.
Great. Alek and Tara, anything different?
I mean, I guess to find like the coach's emails, you want to search, the team up on the internet, and then you should be able to guide yourself there by clicking on the coach, to, get their email. But yeah, I also use like Google Sheets a lot, and I didn't use any agencies like the NCAA recruiting site. I didn't use that. And yeah.
Yeah, those are all, both of you guys have mentioned really good resources. Like obviously you guys have highlighted the UTR website, and going on the actual varsity team's website too, that gives like a ton, like a gold mine of information. Tennis recruiting as well. You can go, I believe, on tennis recruiting to see like a school's past classes and what level they were. So you can see, oh, this school has recruited blue chips only for the past 4 years. Therefore, if I'm not a blue chip, I might not have as much of a shot as I think. Like that's good information to put everything in context. From an academic standpoint, Sophia, I'm glad you mentioned Niche. That website is awesome, and the food grades are hilarious. I will say, I don't even know
I've
what
never
ours is.
heard of this, guys. This is new for me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously it's not an end all be all, but it does give a great basis. Some schools, if you're still in high school, they have my high school had a platform called Naviance, which allowed you to see the history of which students of which GPAs and SAT scores got into certain schools. So you could see like the acceptance and rejection range for like people who went to the same high school as you over the past, I don't know, 5-10 years. And that was very insightful because you can really see like where you fall within who else got in that was in your shoes. That's really like, that provided a ton of insight for me. Like there was the story I like to cite an example for this is there was one school in particular that they were accepting a lot of people from this particular range of scores. Anything above or anything below or above would not get in, like ever. So that kind of insight could be very helpful, and nobody's ever going to tell you that. So looking at the data, if it's available through like a platform like Naviance, or schools have plenty of different software like this. So I'm sure that there's different proprietary ones, but that can be super helpful for kind of revealing, what a school's preferences for applicants are. And additionally, this is something that I found particularly useful when I was researching Brown. A lot of colleges have their course catalogs publicly available. So you can go in there and see like, oh, I'm interested in, for example, I don't know, biology. You can go look up, okay, what are the classes in the biology major at this particular school? And you can go look through it and see if that's like actually interesting to you. Because at the end of the day, if you don't want to, or you can find like a particular class that you think is cool and you can talk about it in your application essays down the line. Like that can provide that kind of interesting conversation starter and kind of like, okay, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to go for this career at this particular school, am I going to have a good time? Like, does this look fun? Like at the end of the day, like you have to make that evaluation too. I know I'm highlighting the academic standpoint, but that's something that can be very like a make or break for a lot of people.
It's important for sure. All right. Last question I have for you guys, and then I'll open it up for any questions that you have, that anyone on the call has for the players or for me. But any like one thing that you wish you knew starting the process, is there anything that you look back on and you're like, oh, I really wish I had known that would have helped me? Or another way you could take it, anything you regret not doing or doing. This is for everybody.
I wish I knew more about like the timeline, like when talking to coaches, or like when you should, when you shouldn't. Because as I said before, like I was a little late in the recruiting process, and I guess like if I was earlier, I may have had more opportunities, because teams fill up like really fast as well.
Yeah.
So you just want to make sure that you're aware of that.
100%. I think that's a really good point, especially from my perspective. I sometimes have players reach out to me going into their senior year, and I've already kind of wrapped up my recruiting class. It's obviously different timelines, but I'm like, oh, wow, this is a really good player. And I'm just hearing from them. So it is important to reach out early. That's good. Anyone else?
I'd say something I wish I knew was also like I would reach out to coaches that I was talking to, and they wouldn't respond for like quite a long period of time, and I never knew why, and I thought they weren't interested anymore. But I guess I wish I knew more on like there are certain dead periods in recruiting that they cannot talk to you, so don't take it personal or anything. Just be patient. And I guess I also wish I was just a bit more proactive with like scheduling visits and stuff, and scheduling them in the fall, I'd say, is my biggest recommendation. Because I tried to schedule visits in the spring and go see schools, but because they're in season in the spring, it's kind of hard to visit. So I'd recommend like scheduling it late summer or like at the end of the spring, but mostly fall. And I think that's something I wish I did more in my junior year instead of my senior year. So
yeah, that's a good point too. And I think Division I and Division III have kind of different timelines for visits as well. I think Division I, you tend to visit usually junior fall is when a lot of the visits happen. And then I think for Division III, a lot of the visits happen junior spring or even senior fall. So it's definitely a little bit later. So that's something to keep in mind too. But Division I, when you have scholarships, that tends to happen earlier and those spots fill. Usually, I think by the new year, you're kind of like their schools are offering spots. So Alek, anything?
Yeah, so I have 2 core points. These aren't really things I wish I knew before starting the process, but I think are things that people should know.
Yeah.
So when I first reached out to coaches, in addition to learning about my tennis, my play style, and my level, they also really wanted to see how I was performing academically. I know I'm beating this horse till it's dead, but I will do this forever. Like college coaches, especially at a lot of very competitive schools, they've got the leverage to say, like, listen, we need students with very high academic standings. And I think that's one thing that you might be able to glean from listening to Sofia and Tara talk, is they're both very smart. They're not like they didn't throw education. They're very smart people. And in addition to being great tennis players. So I think it's something that can get lost in the fold, where some people think, you know what, hey, I can just, play tennis and that's my ticket in. That might not necessarily be the case. It might have been before, but I don't think it's necessarily the case now, especially especially in my situation. Like there really wasn't a way I could just, use one avenue to kind of make myself stand out. Like they were really looking for academic achievement, and they appreciated when I mentioned that. So that's one thing to mention, is in addition to UTR and WTN, because if you don't bring it up, college coaches are going to assume that you might be hiding something, or they might just say, well, whatever. And the second thing, this is more relevant for in terms of injuries. Injuries do happen, and they can really like wreck your recruitment process if you're not prepared with keeping up with your academics and extracurriculars. And I'm very fortunate that I did, because had I not done that, I would have probably had to settle for a school that I would not have been as happy going to. And obviously everything happens for a reason. But my point being is that you don't want to kind of hinder yourself by putting all of your eggs in one basket and none of them in the other. You definitely want to try to maintain a balance between them as much as possible. And that way, if anything happens, whether you get hurt, whether something else stops you from playing tennis, that can be like, you can still have options and the ability to recover.
Yeah.
So those are the two lessons I would say I learned from this whole process.
Absolutely. No, the academic piece is huge. And I know we've been focusing a little bit more on the tennis piece. But that's kind of like, I'd probably say in my second email, if I'll exchange with somebody, we'll say, great, can you send me over your transcript? Because that to me is, I want to make sure they're not wasting their time and I'm not wasting their time if grades are not equivalent to what the school looks for. I think, I'm sure you guys had plenty of coaches ask for your transcripts. So definitely always have those ready. Don't hide anything, send those over and get honest feedback. Cause sometimes it might be, oh, for your senior year, I'd love to see a couple AP classes added, and then you kind of know what to expect. We are running out of time, but I just want to see if anyone has any quick questions on the call. I know we went over a lot, but does anybody have any questions about what we've spoken about?
Great. Well, thank you all so much for being so prepared and having such thorough answers and really putting it all out there. And we so appreciate it. And we've recorded the session, so we'll send it out to everyone who's registered who couldn't make it. And thanks, Alek, for that. That's fantastic. Your email's in there. So we'll send it out to everyone, so you'll have a copy if you want to review it, and then and we'll go from there. We thank you guys so much. This was such a great presentation, such great content.
Thank you, Shauna. No, sorry, I'm just looking at this question. Assume 3 kids. One is a very good private school as UGR, one in public school. That's a good question. I think it definitely depends on, I don't know if the players have answers to this, but from a coach's perspective, I think it depends on the school you're at. It depends on, a variety of things. But I would say don't focus on whether it's a private school, public school, online school. Focus on the rigor that you're taking in your classes. Obviously, yeah, there's some schools that are more known to be prestigious private schools. And if you're taking 8 APs at a prestigious school, yes, does that look better? 100%. But there's a bunch of different circumstances. Some people aren't able to go to private school due to cost. That's never going to be held against somebody. There's a bunch of different ways to look at it. So don't focus, so much on private, public, online. I will say online school, there's some, for instance, when I worked at Yale, online school was tricky because they required, further. They wanted to see that a student could be in a regular classroom setting. So sometimes at Yale, they would say, okay, you have to take a summer course. So I know some schools, some Ivies in particular, might say, if you've been online for 6 years, they might say, you need to take a summer course at a community college or something like that before you come. So definitely, that's a great question, but a tricky one. All right.
Great.
But feel free to email me or any of the, Alek, I know you left your email, but I'm happy to answer any questions through email that anyone's confused about from a coach's perspective.
Perfect. Thank you all so much.
Thanks,
and have a great
Ron.
night. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Thank you for having
Bye.
us. Bye.
Of course. Thank you
Bye.
for being here.
I appreciate it. Nice to see you guys.